You use your phone as an extension of the restlessness of your mind. The reason that I say this is that people talk a lot about scrolling and why we scroll and how it works and the idea of the algorithm, right? This thing that's there and catering to your interests on such a level that you find it irresistible. You need to keep scrolling, you need to keep reading to see what's next and see what's next and see what's next. And you wonder if this is healthy. And the answer, of course, is that it's not. And the reason for that is that what you are attracted to is not the next piece of information, because you don't know what that is. The thing that you're attracted to is what the next piece of information could be. It's like a very condensed version of playing the lottery, where you always win. But it's like a pennies lottery. Like you win, but what you win is basically valueless compared to what you could be doing with your time. Because if you think about how you use your time, if you are playing the lottery and you're making a couple dollars every hour, you're technically winning that whole time. You're making money, a couple dollars an hour. But that is not indicative of fulfillment. What you've done has not enhanced your life. It's not given you the capacity to act on the things that you truly enjoy and that you're truly passionate about. So that's the thing to be thinking about, is what is life made of? What experiences is it made of? One thing that's interesting to me is that this current generation has always had phones in their life to some degree. They've always had these information streams in their life. And so they don't really know what the feeling of boredom is like in the same way that my generation did as a millennial. And having boredom and being able to sit with yourself is really important. It's boring, and it feels like the end of the world in a sense, because you're sitting there going, oh God, I wish I were doing anything else. I'm so bored. But it's a chance to be with yourself, and with the phones, people find ways to avoid themselves. They find ways to avoid seeing themselves, seeing who they are. And seeing like the meaninglessness of life. But life is meaningless. That's its purpose, in a sense, is for you to find the meaning in it. It's for you to make the meaning out of it and find the purpose for yourself. If you're left with boredom, then you have to come up with a purpose. You go, hey, let's play a game. Let's make something up in our minds. If there's nothing around to do that with, we'll just talk or pretend or whatever it is, like how kids would play, right? But if your instinct is, instead of going, let me use the circumstances in my life to try and make something that is enjoyable to engage with, let me be creative. If your instinct is instead to go, oh, well, let me just get out my phone, then you're short-circuiting an important part of your experience and your creativity. And now, this isn't to say that you need to be bored, but what I am saying is that if you notice that when you would be bored, you just fill that with some kind of a feed, some social media, then stop doing that. Get into a state of sitting with your boredom. Asking yourself, okay, what other activities can I do? Like, acknowledge to yourself that you're like, a little bit like a lab rat or something. You're sitting there and like there's this famous experiment where scientists were studying methamphetamines with rats, and they found that if rats were socially isolated from each other, just to sum it up very briefly, that they would use the methamphetamines. But if they could socialize with the other rats, even if they had previously been addicted to the methamphetamines and just sit there pushing the button and pushing the button and pushing the button, once they could be with the other rats, they would just stop using it because they valued rat society essentially more than that button. And that's sort of the paradox here, is that it seems like you're valuing society by connecting through the internet. And actually, there is a part of that. I mean, depending on how your scrolling works, you're maybe seeing some very interesting things throughout the course of your day, but you're doing it in a way that's unhealthy to you. And so it's kind of a blend of these things. But the key factor here, though, is that there is an aspect of your mind that is avoiding itself. It's avoiding boredom. And you don't want to feed the avoidant aspect of yourself, even if you're gaining some, relevant information to your life. Like maybe you're seeing some cool animals or something like that, or some like funny cat videos. And so how do you separate those two things? Well, the easiest way to do that is just to make sure it's not a habit, that you don't just turn to your phone because you're feeling blank or kind of like blah or empty or something like that, or you're standing there and you don't have much to do. Just find other things to do with your time in those spaces. Get into a habit of not getting on your phone. Be creative, and then hopefully that will help you, like engage with the people around you, engage with the world, see what's there in front of you. Talk to people, or just stand there and do nothing, or stare blankly at a wall, like that's okay to do. And the funny thing is, like, you'll get into other areas of other problems you might have if you start doing that, because you'll find if you just sit and stare at a wall, or you sit and you don't do anything, then you'll wonder what other people are going to think of you. You're going to wonder if they're going to think that there's something wrong with you, and that's why you're sitting there doing that. And so that, shines a light on another point, which is that a lot of this has to do with social anxiety to some degree. With trying to figure out what we're supposed to be doing at any given moment, how we're supposed to be behaving, and these kinds of things. And the difficulty we have is that when we're left with just ourselves, when we have to just sit there and see ourselves, such as if you're sitting somewhere and you're just staring off into the distance, you're seeing yourself through the lens of other people in part. You're wondering what they think of you. And that is very unhealthy. And it's at the root of an extremely unhealthy relationship that we collectively have to social media and to each other, which is this idea, which is, what do other people think? What do they think? And who cares what they think? That's the answer to that. Who cares what they think? If you're not doing anything, who cares what they think? Now, everybody has to contribute to society, right? And you have to not do things that hurt other people. But aside from those two things, who cares what people think? Now, the question of what hurts people and what doesn't is very complicated. But that's a whole, in the sense that, like, people choose to be hurt by things sometimes. They'll say, this behavior, this thought, this feeling, it hurt me that you did this or you said that. And people have extended that relationship out of personal relationships and into society itself. They go, the things that you're saying and doing in society are hurting the people around you. And that's hard to deal with, because people all have different communication styles. People process thoughts and feelings differently. And so a lot of that is unintentional. And that's the last thing I'll say is I think that's really important to remember is that if people are hurting each other's feelings in society, it's often unintentional. And if it is intentional, that's, a different kind of person that is really not worth your time to care about what they think, because if they're going out hurting people on purpose, like, who cares what they think? It's the last person you should be invested in what they think of you. Because their thoughts and feelings don't matter in the sense of that, like, they're going to be harsh and critical, and like, do you want your inner critic to match their voice so that you're hurt by what they say? Or are you going to recognize that that person has a very limited way of seeing things? And there is one last thing, which is that voice, how we see each other, how we process the world, I think it's really important when we think of other people and how we feel about them and their thoughts and their opinions and their feelings. It's really, really, really important to learn to separate ourselves from their thoughts and their opinions and their feelings, and recognize that on that level, they're just thoughts, feelings, and opinions. And the place where we are not separated, the place where we get kind of enmeshed with each other, is through social consensus about what thoughts, opinions, and feelings are appropriate. And the simplest, like the key to approaching that idea is to just remind yourself, to keep it very simple. You're a person, everybody else is a person. If you accept each person as an individual and you accept the form of love and spirit that they express, as long as it's, within consent with other people around them. Because if people are doing things outside of consent with each other, like, that's where that begins to involve the rest of society. But before that point, you just exist, your thoughts are valid, your feelings are valid. Now, the question is always, what actions will you take? And are those actions valid? And the answer is not always. That's a social paradigm that needs to explore that. And to the extent that your thoughts and feelings are valid, thoughts and feelings do translate into actions. And so there's invalidity on that level if the actions they're translating to don't involve integrity. And the other aspect is if your thoughts and feelings are something that hurts you, that is out of alignment with who you are because you don't really feel good feeling that way or thinking that way, then it's just an avenue to explore. And that's the kind of, information, energy, feelings, and things that we often avoid by turning to the internet and turning to other people, is we don't want to sit and look at our own thoughts and feelings and find out if they're valid, find out if we're someone different than the other people around us, and find out if we're living the lives and being the people that we really want to be. So essentially, I would just encourage you to notice when you pick up your phone, when you go online, and if it's like an emotional discomfort that sends you there. And then if it is, instead of picking up the phone, ask yourself why you feel uncomfortable. Sit with discomfort. Be with it. Let it speak to you and talk to you, and remind yourself that there's really no discomfort necessary. And then if your mind argues with that idea, find out why and reason with it until you can come back to that place of peace where it's okay to just be. That's all you need in order to feel fulfilled and to feel happy and feel okay in terms of in a rational sense.